All right. I am going to put up links to two videos, or I have put up links to two videos. One is the one that goes with the textbook, and one is this one, which breaks down things in more detail. Um, if you want to follow along in your book, this video follows along with the information in the book. On page 265 is the beginning of this chapter. And we will, in class, go over some of the practice activities there. But I'll just go through this one to give you a heads up. All right. So chapter. So this chapter is called Purpose and Tone. And in this chapter, purpose and tone are sort of higher level reading skills, and these are skills that you need to have to really understand what a piece of writing is saying, but also it helps you make a judgment about the value of a piece of writing. And that's going to be useful for you when you're doing research and you're evaluating the things that you're reading to decide whether or not you should or shouldn't use them. Okay. So starting off, this is the picture on page 265. If we look at it, we want to think, well, what is its purpose and its tone? So if you look at the picture, you see a number of things there. You see three coffins, which are draped with American flags, and you see soldiers carrying the coffins and the other soldiers saluting them. So in this case, the purpose of this picture is to inform us of the return of American soldiers who were killed in service to their country. The way that we know this is obviously all the soldiers are saluting, and that this looks like it's in a plane. And the fact that the coffins are covered with the American flags. This is what happens when someone dies fighting for the country. The tone of one is one of solemnity, reverence, and respect. So one of the things that you're going to notice, and one of the challenges that this chapter presents, is that the words that it lists for tone, a lot of them are going to be words that you don't really know. So on page 271 into 273, there's a list of different words that are used for tone. On pages 272 and 273, it explains what those words mean. So when I give you a quiz on that, I'll let you use this sheet so that you're not losing points just because you don't know what the word means. But solemnity means that it's solemn, meaning serious, and reverence means like it's similar to respect, but it comes from the word revere, which means to honor someone. And you know what respect means. Okay. So when we talk about purpose, what we mean is the author's reason for writing. What is the reason that the author is writing the thing? And this is what's called the purpose of a selection. Now in this chapter, we're going to talk about three common purposes. These aren't the only types of purposes, but they're the only ones that are used in this book. So the first one is to inform. And what that means is to give information about a subject. Okay. Normally, when we're reading something that's there to inform, it's not giving an opinion whether something is good or whether something is bad. We'll talk about the tone later, but when we talk about the tone, what we're saying is that if something is there to inform, it has an objective tone. It's just there to give you information. You get to decide what to do with that information. The second one is to persuade, and this is different. Now, to persuade means you're trying to convince someone to agree with some opinion. So when someone is writing to persuade, they're going to present the facts in a way or the information in a way to try to get you to either do or to believe something. So when you're writing to persuade, you're going to use information, but you're going to selectively choose the information that supports your point, or the writer will do that. And the last one is to entertain. Most of the time in this book, when we talk about entertaining, it means that it's written in a humorous way, that it's written in a funny way to make the reader laugh. Now, Um, uh, we'll get to this. We'll get to this later at the point I want to make. But oftentimes we can just tell the purpose of a book or an article just by the cover or by the title or both. So if we look at these examples, and these are the same ones on page 267. If you want to follow along, you can pause and answer it yourself first if you want. But if we look at the first one says Public Speaking Handbook, and there's the picture of all the people and someone speaking. So the purpose of this one is to inform. We're going to assume that this book is going to give us information about how to speak in public. The word handbook is a clue for that. A handbook means like an instruction guide. So let's look at this next. Let's look at this next one, and this next one says, "I feel great, and you will too." And if we look at the title carefully, it says an inspiring journey of success with practical tips on how to score big in life. Okay, so I just noticed that it has here the foreword by Bill Cosby, which is kind of funny if you know what Bill Cosby's been accused of. But anyway, in this one, the purpose is persuade. It's saying, I feel great and you will too. And in this book, what it's going to do is it's going to give some tips or some suggestions on how you can be successful in life. So the focus here is on getting you to do things to be successful. And this last one, this is Gulliver's Travels. And we can see here we have a giant man and some tiny men. And if you know about this book, this is a story and it was also a movie. But this one is to entertain, right? This is not a serious book that's going to give us serious information or a persuasive book. It's a little bit harder to pick out just from the picture. But anytime we have a novel or a story, it's generally to entertain. But let's take a look at picking out the purpose from a paragraph. So this one is on the same page on 267. So it says the typical American gobbles 3 burgers and 4 orders of fries every week. Toss in the pizza, the popcorn, the sugary breakfast cereals, the sodas, the snack cakes, candy bars, ice cream, and everything else we eat in lieu of real food in this society, and your body is like an 18-wheeler roaring down a high-fat highway straight to obesity and an early grave. Fast food is bad food. It's loaded with bad stuff, like fat and sugar and sodium. It's packed with chemicals that are in there to make it taste and smell and feel like it's real food. What it lacks in vitamins, minerals, and fibers. What it lacks is vitamins, minerals, fiber, all the stuff you really need. So in this case, the primary purpose is to persuade. And if we take a look at some of the language here, we can understand why. So the writer is telling us what's wrong with fast food in order to persuade us not to eat it. So it's a fast food highway that will lead straight to obesity and an early grave. Things we don't want. Fast food is bad. It's loaded with bad stuff. It's packed with chemicals. It lacks vitamins, minerals, and all the stuff we really need. So what we're just talking about there are all of the negative things about fast food. Not that there's a lot of positive things about fast food, but if this was an article to inform, we would also need to be talking about both sides of it, and not be using loaded words like bad or to an early grave that show that the writer has a specific opinion. Let's look at another one. Okay, so this is on the same topic. It's on page 268. I don't know which is harder, taking my body to the doctor or my car to the garage. Both worry me. I'm afraid they'll find something I didn't know. The only advantage of taking my body to the doctor over taking my car to the garage is that the doctor never asked me to leave it overnight. Okay. Now you may or may not find this funny, but the author's goal was to say something funny. Now, so which means that the purpose is to entertain. If we go through it, the reason it's not to inform is it doesn't really give us any information. It's just about the person's opinion, right? About how this person feels. It's not really about persuading, because it's not trying to convince the reader to do one thing or another. So our only choice left is then that it is there to entertain. But what it says here is that the writer uses playful and exaggerated details to entertain the reader. Clearly, the doctor is not going to ask to leave his body overnight. Okay? Um, so let's look at the last on this same page, 268. Personal contact is necessary for common cold viruses to spread. The virus must get into the nose, where they can affect the nasal membranes. Inhaling contaminated droplets produced when someone else coughs or sneezes may be one way to catch a cold. Cold viruses can remain ineffective even if they are outside the body. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Cold viruses can remain infective even if they are outside the body for a few hours. Therefore, you can also catch a cold if you handle something that's contaminated with a cold virus. For example, the doorknob of a classroom or a restaurant door, and then scratch your nose or rub your eyes with your contaminated fingers. The cold viruses can reach your nose when you rub your eyes because the virus can pass down the tear ducts that go from the eyes into the nasal cavities. So if we go through this one, we need to ask ourselves, is this to inform? Is this giving us information about a topic that we don't know about, or is added information? And I would say, yeah, it is. And that's the right answer. It is to inform. Let's look at why it's not to persuade. Persuade would mean that it's asking us to do something or to think something. Now, these facts could be used to help us prevent the spread of cold viruses. But in nowhere here does it say what we should do to prevent. All it does is it tells you information about how the viruses are spread. It doesn't tell you to do anything. And it's not to entertain, because there's nothing really funny about it. There's no humor in this one. So we would say that this one is to inform, and it's giving us two specific ways that the cold virus can spread. So one of the things we need to keep in mind, this book breaks things down individually, and it tests things individually. But in writing, real writing may blend two or even three purposes. So, for example, a persuasive article on avoiding junk food might persuade you to do something, but it might also include a number of facts, which is going to be inform. And it also may have some comic touches. It may have some humorous parts. In that case, it would be to entertain. Okay, so the purpose may be more than one, but it's good to be able to identify the difference between them. All right. The thing, though, that we want to focus on is what is the author's primary purpose. Okay. So in this example that we just had, the primary purpose was to persuade, because I'm going to go back real quickly. It's a persuasive article, right? So the primary purpose is to persuade. So again, this is looking at our main idea as to what the primary purpose is. Okay. So moving along to tone. So skip on over to page 270 and we'll talk about tone. So when we talk about tone, what we're saying is the writer's attitude towards his or her subject. So by that, what we mean is what is the writer's opinion of what he or she is writing about. And tone can be very, very varied. Tone is expressed through the word choice, the different words and the different details that the writer selects, and it creates a different mood. Okay, so the writer's voice can project one or more tones or feelings, such as anger, or cheerfulness, or respect. Okay, any of these ones can come across. Um, so let's look at three examples of tone statements made by on a demanding teacher. So this is page 271. So if we look at the first one here it says, "She hates students. That's all there is to it. I can't wait until I'm out of her class." So in this one, the tone we would say is bitter or angry, and by bitter we mean like upset or hostile, right? But here's another one. "She's tough, but she's also really good. I've learned more from her than I've learned about any other teacher." So this one is more fair or objective, meaning that there's a balance. She's tough, which is a negative, but she's also really good, which is a positive. So by fair and objective, we mean that we're being balanced in the statement. And here's the last one. "I might as well stop going to class now. I'm never going to understand the material. It's hopeless." So in this one, the tone is pessimistic. And what pessimistic means is that you have a negative feeling about what is likely to happen in the future. Okay, so as I mentioned before on pages 271 to 273, there's a whole bunch of words on tone. I have no expectation of you to memorize all of those, but it might be worth it. It definitely it's useful to look through as you do the exercises on tone. Okay, so let's take a look at these ones. This is, oh, I guess these ones aren't in your book. I'm not sure. Um, No, they are. So this is on page 273. So let's look at each one of these. So Walmart may create an economic underclass in our town. Its employees aren't paid enough to live on, and they have very poor benefits. So in this case, we would say that the tone is worried. If we look at this, it's saying that the Walmart's low wages and benefits may have a negative economic effect on the town. So this is showing that the person is worried. Let's look at another statement um, on Walmart. So this next one here, "Walmart is a fact of life. It's going to hurt some people, but at least we'll be able to buy a lot of things at lower prices." So if we look at this one, this is similar to what we've had before, right? It's a fact of life. Okay. Um, it's going to hurt some people, negative, but at least we'll be able to buy a lot of things at lower prices. Is positive. So in this one, it's accepting. Now it's not regretful, because regretful means that you are regretting something. You're sorry about something that happened in the past, and it's not cynical either. What cynical means is distrustful or disbelieving. It's neither of those. So let's look at one more example. So our local government says Walmart will benefit everyone. That's a joke. Walmart is mainly going to benefit itself and our local politicians. So is this cheerful? I'd say no. This is cheerful means happy. This is not happy. Is it cynical? Again, cynical means distrusting and disbelieving. That's what it sounds like. It says that's a joke, right? It's mainly going to benefit itself. So is it threatening? Well, threaten means that it's saying it's going to hurt someone or harm someone, and there's nothing in there to suggest that. So the best answer is cynical. The author doesn't believe that Walmart is going to benefit everyone. Her comment, "That's a joke," gives the item a cynical tone. All right. One of the more common types of tone is called irony. And what irony is it involves a contrast between expectations and reality. And what that means is the expectations is what you expect to happen, and the reality is what actually happens. So something is ironic when the expectations don't meet the reality, when they're opposite from what is expected. So both languages and situations can be ironic. So we have verbal irony and irony of situation. Let's look at verbal irony first. Okay. Um, Verbal irony, what is said contrasts with what is meant. So what is said is not the same by what is actually meant. So, for example, if a telemarketer calls you in the middle of dinner and you say, "I'm so glad you called. I hate eating dinner while it's hot." This is verbal irony because you're saying, "I hate eating dinner while it's hot," but really what you mean is I uh, it's not that I'm glad or that I hate eating dinner. What you actually mean is the opposite of that. Okay? What you mean is that you're very annoyed and that you enjoy eating dinner while it's still hot, and that the person here is disturbing you. So that's verbal irony. There also can be irony of situation, and this is when what is expected or intended contrasts with what actually happens. Back to that. Um, your expectation is that if someone's job is to fight fires, they're not going to be starting fires. It's the opposite of what is expected. So what's the irony of this cartoon? This is on page 275. Communication workshop, sometime tonight in a room upstairs. So this is a workshop or a lesson or a class on how to communicate, but the instructions of it are very some the information about when it is or where it is actually very unclear. Okay? So the irony is that the sign advertising the communication workshop communicates very poorly. It fails to communicate just when and where the workshop will be. Okay. So here's just a quick review, and we will go over this in class. The first thing is about purpose, and the purpose is the reason why the author writes, and the three common purposes are to inform, to give information, to persuade, to convince someone of a point, or to entertain, to make someone laugh. The second point we talked about is tone, and tone is expressing the author's feelings, attitudes or feelings about something. There's a variety of different tones that we looked at. One important tone we want to keep in mind is irony, which means that either you say one thing but mean the opposite, or you do one thing, or the irony of expectation, where it's the expectation, the result is opposite of what you expect. Okay, so we'll go over more of that in class and practice that. This is a difficult chapter, so if you're having a hard time, don't worry about it. We'll go over some of it, and you'll have the opportunity to do some practice before we quiz. Take care. Bye.